And we're back, Mark. We're
Woo!
back. We're back.
You know, I have
Welcome back on a SharePoint Hackathon. Sorry.
I have a tiny trivia that I wanted to lead with, and I wanted to see if we could maybe even get a brand change. SPFx, we know stands for SharePoint Framework. That's exciting. But I think with what we're going to be doing today, we're going to be seeing some amazing, explosive ideas. So I think SPFX should be called SharePoint Fireworks. What do you think?
Sounds good. Sounds good. Because that's what the SPFx has been all about since
Woo!
8 years when we went to the GA, and it's been growing like fireworks.
Amazing,
Exactly.
amazing. I'm going to be in super learning mode today. I'm very excited.
Yes, that's true. Well, now you do know what is an SPFx because you're using SPFx whenever you're using SharePoint. That's because when we think about SharePoint Framework, which is today's topic on the live stream, the cool thing about SharePoint Framework is that we're using exactly the same SharePoint Framework when we're building first-party experiences. So every single web part which we are building and using on a day-to-day basis as an end users or as an users of the SharePoint sites, they're using the engineering implementing those. It's the same SharePoint framework, which are third-party developers, in-house developers, and customers and partners and all of that can actually use as well, which is really, really cool.
Awesome.
Why am I excited? Well, I'm one of the PMs in that team as well, so kind of this hits really close to my my home yard, so to say. So cool to be actually sharing the latest on SPFx as well.
Yeah, there's a ton to share, and I love that you brought some of your great team members that have been doing it from the beginning. So through all the versions, through all the updates, pulling in all the APIs, making them work better and more reliable, and moving us from full trust, farm solutions to something that can actually run at scale and be very, very flexible in the cloud. So to everybody out there, you're going to learn a ton. Welcome to the SharePoint Hackathon. This is webinar number 5. It's really oriented around pro devs, but if you're somebody who works with a developer, it's also good to know what's possible. What can you do? You don't just have to stop with out of the box. So today is a big learning curve for a person like me. I'm not a developer, but I love to know what's possible so that if I have a project or I'm talking to somebody, I at least know what can you do with SharePoint when you go beyond a couple of clicks or out of the box.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that is really the topic of today as well. And that's one of the categories within the hackathon as well. So that's a great segue to actually go through some of the hackathon categories which we have available. So let's recap a bit about the SharePoint Hackathon. So first of all, the hackathon is running from 3rd to 17th. So Monday to Monday in 2 weeks. So you will need to submit your video. We're looking for videos which are showcasing what you built or what have you built in the past or what are you running within your tenant, showcasing pictures, and showcasing the UX and the experience which is there. Now, and you have to submit until Monday, 17th, 11:59 Pacific time, because Pacific time is the end of the world time. Well, whatever that means. But that's the end of that's the Redmond time as well. Now, as part of that submission, as part of the hackathon, we do have 4 different categories, and that was really the key point of this hackathon as well. It is for everybody. You don't have to be a developer. You can be a developer, but you can be also a designer. You can be an end user, or you're an architect or a business analyst, but you're using SharePoint and you can click through on things and submit your video and experience on SharePoint as part of this hackathon. And everybody will get a acknowledgement, and we're going to talk about that one in a second as well. Now, we do have 4 categories, like mentioned. First category, SharePoint agents, which basically is we're looking for videos which are showing how are you using SharePoint agents, what are the scenarios, what kind of files, what kind of information, and how it's being used within your company. And that's a really, really interesting scenario as well. There's so much power on those SharePoint agents. We're also looking for SharePoint portal category as a separate category, and that's where we're looking into out-of-the-box capabilities. So last Wednesday, we had a great show. Yes, last Wednesday, and together with Melissa and Caitlin, where we showed flexible layouts and all of the cool things what you can do with out-of-the-box capabilities with SharePoint, which is a lot. I think, Mark, you almost promised to submit something on this category, didn't you?
I did. It is always a promise, and if I make a promise, I will follow through. I also wanted to get to the end of this one. I probably won't be writing a SPFx web part or doing any of the UX adjustments unless I purely steal from GitHub and it's an easy copy-paste. But I will be doing a little JSON because I know a little bit of how to do that. I want to incorporate a list onto a main page and make it look nice from a calendar perspective. And I do want to use some of the new web parts that make it a little bit easier. The editorial web part. I want to work with some of the flexible layouts in the sections. I'm going to design something that's a little bit more of a campaign. I've kind of started to figure out a little what my plan is. But I think I want to do it where I want to make a campaign announcement that then has some actionable things where you can fill out a form, and you can follow a link to learn more, that kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And that is the beautiful part again on this hackathon. You just create a site, you start working on the UX on the site, and you create a video. You can use, for example, Windows, just what is it, capture feature. There's a video capturing on that one, or any
Snipping.
video recording, a snipping tool. Thank you, Mark.
Mm-hmm.
On capturing that video and then submitting that video as part of your submission for the hackathon. Now, the third category, just to recap on these things, is Viva Connection. And we had a session on Monday on this one showcasing the art of possible within the dashboard. We're going to touch that today as well, because SPFx is actually being one of the extensibility models for Viva Connection. But the idea here is that you create your ideal dashboard, and then you take a video and screenshots out of that one and share that with the people for inspiration. And then the last category is SharePoint Framework. So we're actually writing code, actually doing TypeScript development and then packaging, or maybe you create a SharePoint portal where you put your custom components in. And I think in our storytelling, we were saying extra points on the AI integration, and that goes across the stack as well. So if you have good ideas of integrating AI on any of these categories, there's going to be extra focus on that as well.
So I just want to make a quick note so that you know, Vesta, because I know once you've been talking in the chat, we've got people from Barbados, New York City, we've got Dallas, Texas, we've got India, Porto, Colombia, Belgium. It's so amazing to see the worldwide community. I'm betting a big portion of our audience today are developers, most likely people who have been working with SharePoint for a while. And I wanted to put in one last little plug that SharePoint development, I think, used to require you to really know SharePoint development from a PhD level, like a really deep, you had to know SharePoint to then be a SharePoint developer. Now, I thought maybe you could just share really briefly, you still have to be a developer to do these kinds of things, but you really are open to more of the web toolkit, or maybe there's a better way to describe it.
Yeah, I think the easiest way to explain this, and of course we're going to talk about that one as part of the slides and topic today, but the SharePoint framework is really based on web stack development tooling. And if you're not familiar with that, what that means, it means that any developer who can do web development, HTML development, which is basically TypeScript and React or Angular or Vue.js, all of these different frameworks which are available, can easily implement extensibility or experiences, I would say, for on top of the SharePoint. So, and that's the beauty and the promise of SharePoint Framework, and it's been incredibly successful. We cannot share the exact number. We're going to touch that a bit today, but the growth curve on that extensibility is just mind-boggling. The reason for that is that, again, you don't have to have a PhD on inner outs of server-side APIs, and there's no SharePoint isms as such. And of course, there's certain APIs which you need to know how to access them. And yes, there's a certain ways how you implement SharePoint Framework solution, but if you're a web stack developer, you're implementing anything on a web, you can adapt SharePoint extensibility as well in SharePoint Online, which is awesome.
Awesome. So
now,
what might be some incentives besides learning SPFx and seeing some of the cool stuff today, but to join the hackathon, not just this webinar?
Yes, absolutely. So as part of the hackathon, we have creative awards available for anybody who's submitting, and of course, a bit of a special award for those who are winning individual categories. So let's go through this. So first of all, everybody who's submitting a video will get a badge, and this is the official Credly badge, which are coming in the same Credly service, which everybody is using for certification and everything else. So you can actually associate that to your CV and basically share that you've been actively involved within the community, and you've been actively involved in these kind of events as well. Now, the winners in every single category can choose either coaching and mentoring time with me or Heather Cook, who's one of the familiar faces probably for many of the people in the community as well. Heather is in the Microsoft 365 area and the community side of the house as well. Awesome person to actually have some time. And what we basically are saying that the winners will get 4 hours of a one-to-one coaching and mentoring with either one of us, and they can choose which one they actually want to use for their purpose. So it's up to the winners to choose from between us. But more importantly, you actually also get tickets and a hotel voucher to Microsoft 365 conference. So the winners for every single category, winner or winners in every single category, will get those tickets and a hotel voucher. One team can have 4 members who are submitting a video. If a team will win the category, all 4 people will get the tickets to the Microsoft 365 conference and a hotel voucher, and then an option. We will not force you. We will not make you to do this, but there would be a great option and opportunity to come to the stage with Steve, with all of our leaders, Jeff Teeper and everybody else in the Microsoft 365 conference to tell what you actually build on top of the SharePoint. So we're looking on that option as well. It might be with Kripal. Kripal was actually in our kickoff. It might be with Ed, depending again on what kind of extensibility what you build. And if you're open to join on the stage and talk through your sort of storytelling, hopefully you're open for that. And then the final thing and a final note there as well is that for everybody who's submitting, we absolutely 100% welcome you to be part of our community calls and demonstrate what you built and how you built it in any of the categories as well. So every single week we have at least two community calls, Tuesdays and Thursdays, and there's multiple other calls happening as well, where we have up to 500 live attendees watching. All of the calls are recorded and promoted and recorded and published in YouTube, so anybody will access what you actually done. So it's a great kind of a calling card for anybody who's submitting that, hey, guess what? I built a cool thing. It's me, I did it.
And
so
I think that's the underpinning of what these awards really represent. With the SharePoint Hackathon, we really want to support what it is that you need from us, what you need to know about the tools and, of course, the product, so you know what's possible, maybe something that you learned, you try something new. But also then it's the reverse of that. We want to hear from you. What troubles you when you try to get things accomplished? What did you create? We want to see it. That's the whole point, so that we can showcase your work. And then hopefully other people learn from you. Pay it forward. If you're one of the winners, that will be fantastic. You'll be able to answer a lot of questions. This is a choice I made. This is why I did something. This is a thing that I had to work around, and here's how I did it.
Yes.
And then you'll be able to kind of take the full circle of joining the hackathon, maybe winning the hackathon, but then really focusing and supporting the community, including yourself, to learn. And then, of course, sharing is caring, so share what you do.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mark, for that one. And like you said, really important point. Maybe the video will say that here's the video, here's what I was planning to do. This is how far I got. But because of these reasons, I was unable to do this and this and this. And that's actually brilliant, because that's input from us on the gaps, what we need to address to enable our customers and partners to do more. So those kind of videos, absolutely welcome as submissions as well. Now, I guess it's time to actually invite the real stars of today on the show as well. So we have the PMs and engineering leads, some of these PMs and engineering leads who are running the show behind of SPFx on house. So let's get them invited on the video live stream as well.
Okay, now the whole ratio of dev to non-dev just went from 1-to-1 to 1-to-5. So I'm gonna be like taking my best shots, but welcome.
No. PMs are not allowed to write code, so just to be super clear there. So we have two developers in house.
I don't know. I think I know Luca at least has written a little bit of code. I'm going to guess that the two others know a thing or two. But so that everybody knows who you are, we of course know a little bit about you, but share with our audience a little bit of what you do with the SharePoint team, and maybe your favorite thing the SPFx has brought, but something just to get us started. We'll start with Alex.
Okay, cool. Thank you. My name is Alex. I'm a principal software engineer at Microsoft. I'm a former MVP. I'm a tech lead in SPFx in John's team. My favorite part about SPFx is like extensibility. You can do so many things with the SPFx. It's growing, it's making your life easier, and your extensibility is richer and richer. So, yep, that's about me.
All right, let's move right into the middle as our audience can see it. Luca, a little bit about Luca Bandinelli.
Hi, folks. My name is Luca, and if you understand that I live at the second floor, you are very old, and I appreciate that. I've been in Microsoft for 25 years. I've been one of the founders of SPFx together with Vesa, John, and also Alex. I thought he was on the MVP side at that point, but we got great feedback from him as well. And my favorite things of SPFx, I think Vesa said that SPFx has been literally the first developer framework that was used by first party and third party to be able to build solutions. And from the historic standpoint, it was just like a segue or an evolution of what you were able to do on-prem before, where first party and third party was using the same way of building code. And the SPFx, we basically brought the same kind of concept, but in the new web stack. that both developers can basically use to build solutions on top of SharePoint.
Yep. Thank
Very
you, Luca,
nice.
on that one. And thank you for the message. It's Susan Vegas.
Vegas. So, Las
yes.
Vegas, Susan Vegas.
Yeah,
So when we
good.
have all of the SharePoint Framework sessions at the conference, it'll be on the second floor. So
Here we
so you know,
go.
Vegas.
Nice.
All right, John. If Luca is not going to be doing any dancing for us, we'll move to John, and a little bit about what you do, John.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm the engineering manager for the SharePoint framework. My team owns the SharePoint platform client extensibility. Alex and Luca work closely with them and Invasa. I've been with the SharePoint framework since the very beginning, and one of my favorite things about it has been all the various dev kitchens that we've done and being able to interact with everyone and to get you all to use some of the good and sometimes bad ideas that we've had and to be able to continue iterating based off of your input and feedback. So it really is a community-driven effort in terms of building one of the best client extensibility platforms in M365. So I'm really excited to be here, and I'm glad you all can join us.
Okay.
Awesome. I think before we move into the main part of the show, one reminder, which actually kind of came from one of our audience members, is to ask questions. I'm just going to show this one so that you can see. We really want you to ask your questions so that when we get through a certain part of the presentation, we'll ask our experts what your questions are, or we'll try to answer them in the chat as well. But we'll have time during and after to take a few questions. There's a great one that I think maybe, Vesa, you can lead off answering this really briefly, just to make sure clarifying how people can submit, and then we'll get into the presentation.
Yes, so in this case, if you're writing an extensibility SharePoint framework thing, do we actually just show the functionality, or do we do a code walkthrough as well? And code walkthrough is definitely welcome. So it's not just the UX layer of things, but also the implementation style. How do you actually build the thing? Of course, please do focus on and show us how it's actually behaving and what is the experience, and then do a clarification on how the code has been implemented. That would be brilliant. So definitely welcome. I think we're saying the video should be between 1 minute and 8 minutes. That should give more flexibility on showing the code as well.
Yep, and it's okay to get creative with what you show in your video, how you show it. If you wear a baseball cap or if you're dressed as a clown, we just want to hear from you and what you did in the most fun way. So the non-developer is going to sneak off, and I think we get into the content.
I guess it's time to move on the few slides and talk about SharePoint Framework from a positioning perspective. I'm going to have this chat with Luca, I think, from a storytelling perspective. Let's say, well, we can pick John and Alex just in case in here as well. But Luca, feel free to start going through the topics, and we can elaborate as needed.
Thank you very much. So what is SharePoint Framework? Well, SharePoint Framework basically is the way that you use to build solutions on top of SharePoint and Microsoft 365. SharePoint is part of the Microsoft 365 ecosystem, and you can think about SharePoint as being the engine that powers the majority of the solutions that are built on top of Microsoft 365. So when you build a SharePoint Framework solution, your solution not only shows up in SharePoint as part of a page or a widget as a web part, or maybe a card in Viva Connection, but that solution can go above and beyond SharePoint, and you can show the same solutions in Microsoft Teams or in Outlook or Office.com. And this is because the engine that powers Microsoft 365 behind the scenes is also with SharePoint, and that basically can be used to surface your solutions multiple times and across multiple devices, not just on the browser, but also on rich clients, again, like Outlook and Teams, as well as mobile experiences. So what you can build on top of SharePoint Framework, and what SharePoint Framework can be used, is basically to be able to create multiple solutions. And depending on when you are building that solutions, you will have different capabilities and different options. So if you're targeting Microsoft Teams, you can basically create, or in Outlook or Office.com, you can create personal applications, or basically gives you the ability to drive your solution and focus your solution where the users spend the majority of time. You can think about big companies having different set of users. Some users spend their entire working time on SharePoint. Some of them spend their time in Outlook or Teams. The beauty of SharePoint Framework is that you can build your solution, and that solution can reach the users where they spend the majority of their time. You can also build the Teams tab, meeting application, and messaging extensions, and all of those will surface in Microsoft Teams. With Viva Connections, when we shipped the Viva Connection a couple of years ago, maybe it's more than that at this point, we basically decided that the way to build capabilities on top of Viva Connection as a live widget called cards was to use Viva SharePoint Framework for both first-party developers and third-party developers. And recently, we have brought this capability to go beyond Viva Connection and host these cards on Copilot. Very recently, we have shipped this capability that is rolling across different tenants, where if you start interacting with Copilot and you have Viva Connection configured and you have meaningful cards there, you will be able to surface those cards in Copilot, and Copilot will bring them to life in the Copilot chat so that you can interact with them without losing your flow. And of course, SharePoint. With SharePoint Framework, you are able to create extensions to make your existing SharePoint pages more vibrant and surface capabilities that you need for your business, and web parts, where basically you are able to create a meaningful widget that you can compose and during authoring phase, and being able to create more business-oriented and business driven solutions and pages. And of course, one of the things that SharePoint Framework brings to the table, besides the ability to connect to API and content, it's also the ability to basically have functionalities that are key for a framework to be successful, just like single sign-on. You don't have to sign in multiple times if you have to move and jump across different clients, or if you have to connect to get data from APIs. And you can host the code directly in SharePoint because we have the ability to do that, and also integrate with CDN. And of course, just like Veza was mentioning at the beginning of this webcast, the ability to use industry standard tooling for web development, just like NPM and Gulp and so forth. So let's go a little bit more in details on what is SharePoint Framework. And just like Veza was saying, that the growing of SharePoint Framework has been phenomenally exponential. And this is sure, in part of because of the success of the framework and how the framework is powerful, but most importantly is because of you, the community that have adopted this framework and have been able to create fantastic solution and make a lot of customers happy by building their requirements and their needs on top of SharePoint and Microsoft 365. So for that, we thank you very much, folks, for all the work and all the effort you've built and you have dedicated on top of SharePoint Framework and Microsoft 365 development. So moving a little bit more on kind of a hot topics of the things that have been recently released. So 1.21 has been released as beta recently. And one of the things that we have been provided is the ability to you as a developer to configure your web parts to be aware of the flexible layout. Flexible layout, something that has been described this coming week as the new ability to have more controls that are less constrained in the columns and row paradigm on a page. Existing web parts already work, but they are still have some kind of constraints today. What you can do with 1.21, you can basically teach your web part that can behave better in the flexible layout, to give them the ability to have some kind of defined height and width, and being able to have dynamic resizing if needed. Again, this is an optional thing that you can put in your web part to be able for the web part itself to be a little bit more aware on the layout context where the web part get positioned as part of the authoring experience. And we will see about that at work a little bit later during the demo. Another thing that was introduced in 121 is the ability for third-party developers to make their cards personalizable. Recently, we have released this capability on Viva Connections for the dashboard that is called user personalizations. And what it means really is that the user can now select which kind of cards are more suitable for them and have some kind of degree of personalization on the way they are experiencing the dashboard. before 121, only first-party cards were allowed for the end users to be selected and be part of this personalization experience. With 121, we have opened this capability to third-party developers, so that third-party developers can now basically say that they can allow or disallow a specific card to be used by the end user, so not the dashboard owner, but the end user, to be part of their personalization experience. So with that said, let's move a little bit forward. Before the demo, I think, Vesa, you have a couple of things that you want to add here.
Yes, definitely. So just to call out AKMS SPFx, we've been showing that a few times already on the show, but it's a super easy URL to remember, and there's a lot of documentation available on this one as well. By the way, we want to actually say for everybody who's been submitting there are suggested updates on the documentation. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We've been, like Luca explained already, and we've been around this journey now for 9 years, roughly a bit more than 9 years actually, and there's a lot of content samples, documentation available, which is based on the input from all of the people who've been building their experiences on top of SPFx. Really good example is some of the samples which we see in the live demo, and the samples which people are actually using even in production are generated and created by our ecosystem. So as part of our community work and open source community work, we have this AKMS community samples location where we have hundreds and hundreds of samples available for SPFx as well. And many of them are actually contributed by the community. And of course, there's a few of them contributed by Microsoft as well. So really making sure that everybody can benefit from samples for inspiration, but also for getting unblocked on whatever they're building. So please check that URL out. But I guess it's time to move into Alex, and let's do live demos on those experiences which are rolling out in 121 and a few other things as well. But Alex, let's jump on your screen.
Yep. Thank you for that. So let's start with Viva Connections, and we were talking about Viva Connections. Luca was talking about like different changes that we are doing. A few things that I want to highlight here. First of all, with the SharePoint Framework version 119, we released the ability to add charts in the card views on your cards. So you can see sales distribution, sales by month, stock prices here. So basically this experience is much more richer than you had before, when you had just images and text. Right now you have charts that can solve your extra business needs. And as always, all these experiences are consistent across Microsoft Teams, web, and mobile. Furthermore, in 120 of SPFx, we added additional capabilities for even richer experiences on top of SharePoint and on top of connections. And in this example, we have FAQ card here with a quick view, but the thing is, in this quick view, it's not adaptive cards, it's so-called web quick view. Basically, you can use HTML, JavaScript, React, whatever you want in your quick views now, and developers now can add more complex logic in their cards, and without any constraints on adaptive cards boundaries. So this is about the connections, and now let's switch to the portals. And we know that portals, and Luca told that portals and SharePoint sites are still like key portion for customers, and especially around collaboration and communications. And again, as Luca mentioned, recently we released flexible layouts that allow you to have like good resizing, more flexible resizing on your page, as well as features like you can position your web parts one behind or on top of another. And with like all third-party SharePoint Framework web parts will still work in flexible layouts. The thing is, by default, they're not so flexible, and I have not flexible third-party web part here. So when I try to resize this one, it still stick to specific like columns. So we have 1/3, half, and full width. And with 121, you will actually be able to make your web part flexible. And in that case, I'll show it here. I have the same web part, and the only difference is actually in the manifest, as Luca shown, it has this property for flexible layout. So now I can actually resize it however I want. And if I try to move this web part, I can place it in the flexible layout section at any point. Right now, it will be on top of any other web part. So all this flexibility that first-party web parts have now will be available for third-party web part if you actually want that. Why we made it as an option and not by default? Because we want you as a developers, we want you to be prepared for this change because it's more flexible. So your UX should be ready for that. And that's all about live demos.
Excellent, really, really cool. And a cool thing about, just to recap on this one, we talked about it actually in last Wednesday with on the flexible layout storytelling as well. We didn't really want to introduce you a new page format. We provided flexible layout, not flexible pages. And the beauty of that one is that then any existing page, you can just include the flexible layout in and it starts working over there. So you don't have to recreate any content, but you have that flexibility available. And of course, for the new content, you can just create one flexible layout and create a full page on that, and you're good to go.
Excellent.
Yeah.
I was just going to see if we would be open to a couple questions.
Absolutely, we are always open for questions, right, Alex?
Yeah,
so
sure.
This might be a good tag team between the two of you, because a little bit, I think it comes from what Vesa was showing around the samples, the community samples. This one was asking about if you weren't a developer, which in between the two of you, I am clearly not, and you want to go to GitHub or go to some of those samples. The samples are there, but can you talk about how usable they are directly from the samples gallery in terms of like me being able to use it, or if there's a nice tutorial how to put some of those GitHub solutions into place without really having to know code?
There's multiple dimensions on this question, which is understandable. So first of all, you should never take any code directly from internet and GitHub and just put it in your tenant, because you never know what that code is actually doing. And that's a really important security thinking mindset. Always, it's don't run scripts randomly within a tenants. Now, in this case, these samples have been vetted and they're basically tested, but there's always a bit of a concern related on taking any code. We intentionally did not want to have a installable packages in a GitHub, because there would be potential legal implications out of that. So I'm going to be super transparent on this, and that's why it's source code, which is in a GitHub. Now, technically, pulling down the source code and then in quotes, compiling and transcompiling that to be in a package level, and then testing that, for example, in another trial tenant or some other tenant before doing further validation, is a quite trivial and a simple thing. So it's a super straightforward thing. If you follow up on what needs to be, there's videos available, what you need to have within your computer to be able to compile, transcompile SPFx solutions. But there is really no kind of just drag and drop this solution to the tenant because of the potential security concerns. For any sample out there, we need to be really thoughtful on that as well. Hopefully that makes sense.
I think it does. I think, Alex, do you have any suggestions? Let's say you're early to coding. You may not know a lot about SharePoint and some of the new tools, but you grab one of the samples, you don't put it directly into production, but you're wanting to leverage it for the SharePoint Hackathon. Do you have one in particular do you think might be one of the easier samples, or just an easy way for people to get started?
I think all of the web parts that we have as samples are pretty simple, so I would probably just go one by one. I don't have one in my mind that is like the simplest one, but we have such samples as like slider or like carousel or things like that are pretty easy. They may be like 200 lines of code, but they demonstrate all the features that community provide, that SharePoint Framework provide. They can integrate PnP components like React components that are created by the community as well. And from other side, because it's not so much code, you can still easily understand how the typical SharePoint Framework solution is built.
All right. Understood. One gets a little bit more into the weeds, and it kind of brings in the topic from one of our previous webinars, SharePoint agents. And the question is, hello, are SharePoint agents eventually going to be able to identify links from websites, Microsoft Sway docs, and reading an HTML links destination to return information? Maybe, a generic approach to how you would accomplish this, and then layer in, where agents are in this journey.
So the kind of a reformatting the question would be, can I use Microsoft Sway documents or Loop documents or whatever source files as the source knowledge information for my agents, including SharePoint agent? And there are certain limitations on this, but in the longer run, there's going to be more and more sources supported. Not sure on Microsoft Sway documents specifically, because I'm not sure about explicitly on that particular product, but I'm 100% sure, and I know that we have in a roadmap for supporting like Loop components and Loop files and then lists and all of that as the source information for your agents, including SharePoint agents. Now, timelines, ETAs, estimates, we don't have those dates to be shared within this live stream, but that's definitely an area where we are adding more support within the agents, including SharePoint agents. So you can kind of rethinking, reformatting. If you think about SharePoint agents, they are agents like Copilot Studio agents, or they're agents like declarative agents, which we create for Copilot. Behind the scenes, they're technically using the same technology in many, many cases. From an end user perspective, it's just a matter of how do you create them? Do you create them using a SharePoint UX? Do you create them using the agent builder in Copilot Studio or Copilot Studio, or within the ProCode side of the house? And of course, custom engine agents, different discussion. But again, so source files support getting better.
I have to admit, that was one of the things that I thought might be helpful for everybody to hear about, since there's, of course, an element of SharePoint agents that I think everybody should tap into within their hack, because it's cool. It's obviously going to add a lot of dynamism to your interactive portal or page, whatever you create. And I thought we could bring Luca and maybe John, if John wants to join us. It may just be for a minute or two to spend, where are we with SharePoint agents? Where are we with Copilot Studio? Or where are we just in general, or where people are thinking of, how can I bring in the value of Copilot into my framework of some sort, of bringing it into an interactive page, or maybe even Power Platform, something that might be just worth hearing, how people can use it for the hackathon, but also just to share some learning. Where are we with Copilot extensibility?
John, you want to take a stab?
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to start. So there's lots of different things that we have looked at and are experimenting with. Something that Luca has shown at previous conferences is this whole concept of being able to have your investments within Viva Connections, show up within the agents in SharePoint. So that's going to be super cool. That's something that we're hoping to have public preview in. Well, I guess I'll start with soon. That will hopefully have public preview soon. And then I think you all have hopefully been playing around with agent creation in SharePoint. Alex actually has played a pretty big role in building that authoring experience. We're looking to expand the ability for that to be grounded on more content as well, like SharePoint pages. And then there's some work happening for us to continually improve the understanding of Copilot, of different artifacts within SharePoint, and so responses will keep getting better. From a extensibility standpoint, we're continuing to look at, from the SharePoint framework, what ways we can enable you all to interact with perhaps the agent pane, or to find declarative agents as part of your solution, so that you can go and build something that is holistic, that can now not only have UX presence, but then have something that is conversational as part of your solution. And then we're also looking, obviously, at the ways to enable agentic experiences, or effectively having the agents perform autonomous tasks as well. And so there's lots of different exciting things happening here. And I think, with the stuff that we currently have, I am super excited to see how you all you have used the SharePoint custom agents Yeah.
Excellent. Luca, Alex, any other thoughts before we move to the next question?
I think that from my side, exactly what John said. The fact that we have created this experience on SharePoint for Copilot and agents, that they can be more grounded on SharePoint content and have more contextual information around SharePoint, is a great opportunity for people that build SharePoint solutions and for developers to basically interact with that, with something that we are hoping to work together in the next future, and with things that we started, like the ability to surface some of your existing SharePoint framework solutions, just like Viva Connections cards in this kind of SharePoint agents. So that's, you can see that being kind of a starting point of a journey that we want to continue and bring more and more integration between third-party solutions and agent Copilot experiences on top of SharePoint.
All right.
One thing.
Go ahead, Alex. Go for it.
One thing to mention, because we are in SharePoint Framework, part of the hackathon, and one of the key points there, I believe, is actually hacked. So don't forget that SharePoint agents are just .agent files, and these are files. You can create files, you can use files. So yeah, keep it in mind.
Sneaky, sneaky.
Love it. I love it. So I'll just open up here, since we're on the 5th webinar. I just wanted to say we maybe thought about having it called the Share Hack, but SharePoint Hackathon was much more easy for people to understand. But anyway, I'm supportive with what Alex just said. So Share Hack for the win. But let's move on to the next question. It's kind of the other meaty side of SharePoint that we've been talking about as one of the data sources to come for SharePoint agents. It's all about lists, this question. Sorry to cover up everybody there. But this is really focused on, I think, permissions on a list. You know, we know that we don't support list item permissions, so just put that out there. But from a developer's perspective, if you wanted to highlight a specific list item or grant access or showcase in a really isolated fashion an individual list item or maybe some rows and be able to filter specifically, how do you approach developing against the list API or just pulling in data from a list source?
Although the question says preferably without programming.
Yeah, I can answer some of that part because I've worked with lists plenty, but I just thought that with the SharePoint framework and everything, that there might be a list API answer to what we don't really support, which is that list item level security.
Now,
but
technically,
we
do support that, but it's not recommended to be used. I think that's the right statement on. So technically, you can have a list level, item level permissions, but it's not something which is scalable, and it's not something what we recommend people to actually use. So the one way of approaching this would be then having a overlay on the list items, which is not security, which means that people can actually access the information if they are clever enough. But overlay means that you basically hide, programmatically filter away the information which is intended to be used based on, for example, user profile attributes or something like that, or audiences and all of that. But doing that without programming gets tricky. With list formatting, which is a great option for JSON to do magical stuff in lists, you can't really do filtering based on user profile attributes, at least for now. That is though something which potentially could come, who knows, in the future on that side.
Yeah, my non-developer answer, but I think there's 3 options, and some of which Vesa was just touching on, is if you use any of the filtering capabilities where you create multiple views, you could basically create views for different audiences. They may not be exactly security trimmed, but you could at least narrow down what it is they see based on what you share with them. So if you use a filtered view based on a certain criteria, hide this, show that, and then share that URL as just a hyperlink to certain people, then they'll access just those list items. But to a basis point, of course, you can access it. Also think about the Power Platform as a front end to how people interact with your list. You could only program the Power App to show certain parts of the list. So you could obfuscate a little bit, but again, not deep level security trimming.
Now, I think from a timing perspective, let's jump on covering a few roadmap slides on the future of SPFx and the investments areas where we are, first of all, where we are right now, and then what are we looking into doing also in the future. So this slide is something what we've been showing on the SPFx bi-weekly community course. We, by the way, always share roadmap in bi-weekly in our SPFx community course. Please to check out those details if needed, if you're interested on staying up to date. But Luca, can you go through the latest on this one, and then let's talk about then the positioning on the future investments on SPFx, because it's definitely not done.
Absolutely. So we released the 120 back in September. Some of the features has been talked about and has been demoed before. So just like Alex was showing, the new chart types for Viva Connections in cards, and the ability to have quick views that are beyond just adaptive card, but more in line to HTML and React. Then in 121, we added support for flex layout. By the way, 121 is now available in beta. If you folks want to use that as part of the hackathon and give us feedback, it gives you extra functionalities, just like the flexible layout, and give you the opportunity to give us feedback on things that we may or we should consider to bring as part of the final release of 121. Case in point, we are doing work to support the Node of V version 22, which was not something that is part of this preview. So this has come as part of feedbacks from the community. And then in terms of what we think about the future of SPFx and the next versions of SharePoint frameworks, of course, we have the GitHub list, which the community is helping us understanding which kind of focus area we should take more in terms of solving existing problems or filling existing gaps that we have as part of SharePoint frameworks. We are bringing cards, adaptive cards extensions that today only lives in a Viva connection as part of widgets that you can put inside of modern pages. Just like John was mentioning, we are starting releasing of the ability to have adaptive card extensions or cards in Copilot or SharePoint agents in SharePoint Copilot experiences. And then in terms of what we want to go in the more broader aspect of SharePoint frameworks. If you think about SharePoint framework today, SharePoint framework is primarily about customizing and extend functionalities and capabilities on pages and scenarios like Teams or Viva Connections by creating widgets. So you create web parts, you create cards. We have seen more and more the ability or the needs for the solutions to have a little bit more of a broader brief in terms of being available not just on a page, but maybe expand on multiple pages. What if you want to build a solutions that has multiple pages and they are connected, and it's a full-fledged solutions on top of SharePoint? You cannot do that today. You have to create pages programmatically by using the Pages API or having the author crafting those pages, and then you can add SharePoint framework widgets, web parts, card, extensions, so forth. But you can imagine that we want to basically expand the capabilities and having more an application-centric approach where you can start using SharePoint framework to build more full-fledged solutions on top of SharePoint. We are still thinking on how to do that, and we are still thinking on the way that we want to surface this capability to the third-party developer community and customers, but that is one of the areas that we want to bring there. And of course, as it was been mentioned multiple times during this conversation, being way more integrated and plugged with all around AI. So Copilot, or maybe also give you the ability to bring your own investments that has been on agentic and AI outside of Microsoft 365, maybe as part of Azure AI and stuff like that, being able to bring these kind of solutions less as an ad hoc kind of hackathon or solution that you will have to build, giving the existing resources that SharePoint Framework brings, but give more and more the ability in the core of SharePoint Framework to make these kind of connections and integrations.
And coming back on, if you think about the component-centric and application-centric, that's a really good kind of a direction, because one of the feedback what we kept on having from customers is basically web parts are awesome, and then web part might be dependent on lists and multiple lists. And what if I have 5 web parts and I want to provision that easily as for end users to be available? That's what the application-centric approach basically means, that you can build a bit more comprehensive experiences rather than individual widgets. So which will be more end user and more business ready, so for customers to use. Cool.
All right.
Unfortunately,
so
we can't go too deep in this stuff right now, which, but good teasers, absolutely. So
I mean, if you looked at what you actually now are developing and delivering that is public, and compare that to when it was 0 years old, that's a huge roadmap that will continuously evolve, continuously getting feedback. And of course, there's always something that we can't yet talk about, but coming soon.
Yes.
But I want to do a lightning round since we have all of you. These, I think, are shorter type questions that I saved for the last. So let's just go through them. We've got about 5 minutes. There's about 7 questions. Here's the first one. Can we code and submit an SPFx dashboard for hackathon submission?
Absolutely, 100%. Yes.
100%. Okay, that's quick. I'm not even going to ask for any other opinions. 100% is
great
100%.
idea. Yes.
All right, next one is always a great topic. Are there any extensive accessibility improvements coming in future releases? I think they mean the SharePoint framework, but if you know a little left to right about accessibility in SharePoint. Any thoughts?
Yes, we are completely committed to having the SharePoint product in general meet very high accessibility standards, and so the EM, sort of like one of my peers, is focused on this and working through not only our entire web part portfolio, but the rest of the SharePoint authoring product as a whole to continue being more and more accessible. And so this is something that's very continual. There's not really like an end date here, and then we're committed to always improving that.
Yeah, a really good example, by the way, on that one is if you go HTTPS AKMS SP-blog, and there's a relatively recent blog post together with Tina, where we talk about the accessibility checker, which is a new feature available within SharePoint or coming too soon to SharePoint, and we have a live video demos on that one as well as part of that blog post. So please do check out that one. It's a really good example of the investments which we're doing on accessibility side and looking into improving always that side of the world as well.
Same for Viva Connections dashboard, like all the cards that you're developing, although they are 3P web parts, cards, they're all accessible, so by default.
Yeah, we have the same level of standard accessibility that we have internally for our first-party controls, exposes for third-party developers. Then we bring a lot of accessibility as part of the framework, just like Alex said, and give you the ability as you as a developer to add something on top of it wherever is needed.
All right, so you heard it. Sharing is caring. Sharing with accessibility in mind is caring a lot. So here's a question. It's a little bit of a licensing-oriented question. To add agents during this SharePoint hackathon, do they need licensing in a dev tenant where they might be doing their SharePoint hacking?
Unfortunately, the situation for that one is yes. So to be super clear on that one, in a default dev tenant, if you have the classic dev tenants, which you cannot easily get right now, you cannot even acquire the Copilot license on top of that. So you would have to have a trial, which is $72 within a year, so 12 months, $72, and then you would have to add the licensing on top of that, which is obviously a bit frustrating. We get that. The SharePoint agent is, however, just one of the categories, so you can definitely submit on any of the other categories as well within the hackathon if you don't have access on Copilot license. Right now, SharePoint agents does require that. There's ongoing discussions and planning to get situation potentially clarified, but Copilot does provide so much value when it's being enabled, and that there will be always some sort of a cost associated on using that.
So hopefully, Vinay, that helps understand why you're not seeing the agents in your dev tenant, and certainly the workaround to that. I think we can from a hackathon and using agents perspective, we shared that in the previous webinar, how people can approach that and some of the requirements. So the next question, How often does the SPFx solution need to be or should be upgraded when there are a couple of custom SPFx solutions? What are your recommendations?
You update the solutions when you need to do that. One of the promises of SharePoint Framework has always been to be backward compatible, and we have done a very tremendous amount of job, and thanks to Alex and John and the rest of engineers to maintain that promise through all the releases that we have provided. But of course, the new capabilities are only available on new solutions. Case in point, the 121 brings you the flexible layout, and if you want to bring the capability for your existing solution to understand and be more consistent about flexible layout, you need to upgrade that solution to 121. But in terms of support, you don't. So we do things behind the scenes to ensure that wherever possible, some of the concept in the some of the core functionalities of the frameworks also can bring to existing solution. One example I can give you is authentication. In the past 5 years, we have changed the way that we authorize and get access to APIs at least 3 times. And all of these different evolutions have been also used by previously developed web parts and component without you not even knowing about that. So there are things that are always backward compatible, but if there are new functionalities and capabilities, this is where you should go and upgrade.
Excellent. Thank you, Luca, and thank you, Aruna, for your question and joining us today. We have one more question, and then we're going to move into a little bit more information for our audience as we close out. This one is for on-premises. Can we expect this upgrade version on SPFx for an on-premises version, the subscription edition specifically in the question?
SharePoint Framework has, so this is an interesting question. The more you have seen evolutions on SharePoint Framework, the more you have seen that some of those evolutions require a cloud environment to be there, right? And the reason that you are not seeing this kind of solution is because on premises, the environment that you're playing with is vastly different from what you have in Microsoft 365. Integration with search, integration with Outlook, Copilot being one of those examples, they don't exist as part of on-premises. So it becomes a very, very counterintuitive and not even bringing value to our customers on-premises to bring that solutions as part of on-prem, because when you are there, you cannot be able to experience and leverage these capabilities because those environmental concept and functionalities do not exist on-prem. So the go-to answer here is that as if you want to experience the latest capabilities of SharePoint frameworks and SharePoint in general, SharePoint Online is where you are going to and you want to be, where you're going to be and you want to be.
All right, so we are at the wrap-up phase. We're going to start wrapping up by saying thank you to Alex, Luca, and John, and of course, my cohort to this side of me, Vesa. Thank you all for your great answers, your presentation, and of course, the demo. And we hope inspiration to go and try out SPFx, do something that you learned today, or do something you don't think is possible, because that's what hacking is all about. Yep. So, Vesa, off to you to help wrap us up.
Yes, so this one was the last session. Thank you, Alex. Thank you, Luca and John. Last live stream session. We still have well, technically we have one more waiting for us, which is the awards ceremony. So we're acknowledging the winners, and we're acknowledging the people who contributed on the samples. And if you go through the hackathon details, you'll find that there's a few additional categories, which are like the coolest voice used in the video when you're explaining the things and all of that. All of that will be covered in the award ceremony, which is happening on March 26th. And then we'll follow up on that ceremony within the Microsoft 365 Community Conference in May. Now, recapping what we're asking people to do, please first of all, register. That's going to help us on getting the numbers and registration, all of that information in place. Create some cool stuff. Create some stuff in SharePoint agents or UX, SharePoint designs, or Viva Connection, or in SharePoint Framework. Create a video with 1 to 8 minutes. There's multiple ways of doing the video, but please show what you actually created using the the UX, and that's what we're looking into doing. And then submit by end of the day on 17th of March. That's on next Monday, end of the day over there. You can already today go back on the SharePoint Hackathon playlist to check the previous recordings if you're interested on what we did, what the previous live streams are all about. And this live stream, Mark, when is this live stream available as a recording?
This live stream is available the second that you stop talking, Vesa. We love the technology that we use because immediately when the broadcast ends, it is available for on-demand consumption. So if you want to review something, go back to something that one of our experts said, or you want to take it to the next level and share it with your team, share it with another developer you think will be wanting to get into the SharePoint Hackathon, it'll immediately be available. We now have 5 webinars. So if you know somebody who's not a developer, we have 4 webinars for them already that talk about portals and pages and agents and oh my, there's so many things. But yeah, that playlist that you see on the screen now is a YouTube playlist, and you will immediately be able to watch and share easily, just as you would any other YouTube video.
Yes, and if you have any questions, please go to the GitHub location, which is associated. That's AKMS SharePoint Hackathon. There's a discussion board over there. We're answering all of the questions, what you have in your mind. If you need any support, we are here to help you. We have PMs and everybody are ready to help for everybody within this hackathon. And then, of course, this will not stop here. We have first of our ceremony, and then we'll follow up on the discussions in the Microsoft 365 Community Conference, where hopefully you are able to join us as well. That's going to happen in Las Vegas at MGM in early May. We will be there, both me and Mark, and many other people from Microsoft. Luca will be there, and many others as well. So hopefully you will be there. But I guess that's it for today. Thank you, Mark.
I think that's
always
it.
a pleasure.
Just little reminder, you have until the 17th, so get hacking. And maybe if you join us in Vegas, get packing. Cue the video, Aaron. Cue the video.
Please welcome Jeff Tieper.
Oh, hello. Have you seen this? It's the SharePoint Hackathon happening in March 2025. Come on, check it out.
Welcome to the March 2025 SharePoint Hackathon.
Have you heard about the SharePoint Hackathon? Well, it's happening March 3rd through 17th. No matter if you're an end user, designer, architect, or developer, there's going to be a place for you in one of the 4 categories.
Hi, this is Mark Anderson. I hope you can join the SharePoint Hackathon this March.
See you at the SharePoint Hackathon in March 2025.
I'm Emily Mancini, and I'll be joining the SharePoint Hackathon. Will I see you there?
Hey, I'm Eric Overfield, and I'm looking forward to seeing you at the SharePoint Hackathon this March.
Coming up in March, whether you're a business user, designer, architect, or developer, there's a place for you in this hackathon.
Hey there. I will be at the SharePoint Hackathon. Will you join us too? See you soon.